The movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God was a religious movement in Uganda that gained notoriety in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The group claimed to be a Christian sect that aimed to restore the Ten Commandments of God to their rightful place in society. The movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God was founded in the early 1990s by Credonia Mwerand, a former prostitute, and Joseph Kibweter, a former politician. The group's beliefs were a blend of Christian and indigenous African traditions. They claimed to have received messages from the Virgin Mary and Jesus Christ. Before founding the movement, she was a shopkeeper, brewer of banana beer, and a sex worker. Mwerand was also a member of a religious group devoted to the Virgin Mary. Many details of Kibweter's life, and especially death, remain unclear. What is known is that he came from a strongly pious Catholic background and was likely wealthy by Ugandan standards. During his life, Uganda experienced both religious and political upheaval, which likely influenced him. The strongest of these influences may have been religious movements that emphasized miracles and Marian apparitions. The group's teachings emphasized the need to adhere strictly to the Ten Commandments and to prepare for the end of the world. Members were required to live in communal settings and to follow a strict set of rules and rituals. By the late 1990s, the church had grown into a thriving community, set in pineapple and banana plantations. Members lived communally on land bought by pooling their assets, which they sold when they joined the movement from the Virgin Mary through a hidden telephone system that communicated through everyday objects. In western Uganda, they built houses for recruitment, indoctrination and worship, and a primary school. The group's leaders became increasingly paranoid and reclusive in the late 1990s. They began stockpiling weapons and food, and they cut off contact with the outside world. January 1, 2000, passed without the advent of the apocalypse, and the movement began to unravel. Questions were asked of Mwerand and Kibweter, and payments to the church decreased dramatically. Ugandan police believe that some members, who had been required to sell their possessions and turn over the money to the movement, rebelled and demanded the return of their money. It is believed that events that followed were orchestrated by sect leaders in response to the crisis in the ranks. In March 2000, the group's leaders announced that the world was coming to an end and that they had received a message from the Virgin Mary that they would be saved if they followed a set of instructions. Another date was immediately predicted. March 17, 2000, was the new end of the world. A doomsday, they said, would come with ceremony and finality, according to the New York Times. The movement held a huge party at Kanungu, where they roasted 3 bulls and drank 70 crates of soft drinks. Minutes after the members arrived at the party, nearby villagers heard an explosion, and the building was gutted in an intense fire that killed all 530 in attendance. The windows and doors of the building had been boarded up to prevent people from leaving. The mass murder-suicide of the movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God shocked Uganda and the world. It remains one of the largest incidents of mass murder-suicide in history. The group's leaders were never caught, and their fate remains unknown. The fire alerted the Ugandan authorities as to what had been occurring in the movement. Several days before, movement leader Dominic Kataribabo had been seen buying 50 liters of sulfuric acid, which may have started the fire. The whereabouts of the 5 principal cult leaders, Joseph Kibweter, Joseph Kasapurari, John Kamagara, Dominic Kataribabo, and Credonia Mwerand, are unknown. 4 days after the church fire escaped, police investigated movement properties and discovered hundreds of bodies at sites across southern Uganda. 6 bodies were discovered sealed in the latrine of the Kanungu compound, as well as 153 bodies at a compound in Buhanage, 155 bodies at Dominic Kataribabo's estate at Rugazi, where they had been poisoned and stabbed, and another 81 bodies lay at leader Joseph Naimurinda's farm. Police stated that they had been murdered about 3 weeks before the church inferno. The tragedy raised questions about the role of religion in society and the dangers of religious extremism. The Ugandan government launched an investigation into the group, and it was found that the group's leaders had manipulated and exploited their followers for financial gain. The group's leaders had also reportedly engaged in sexual misconduct and had impregnated female members, some of whom were as young as 12 years old. Medical examiners determined that the majority of the 395 individuals who did not die in the fire had been poisoned. Early reports suggested that they had been strangled based on the presence of twisted banana fibers around their necks. After searching all sites, the police concluded that earlier estimates of nearly 1,000 dead had been exaggerated, even though the final death toll had settled at 924, 6 more than the People's Temple in 1978. The movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God was officially banned in Uganda after the tragedy. However, the group's legacy lives on, and it serves as a cautionary tale of the dangers of religious extremism and the importance of regulating and monitoring religious groups. On March 17, Kibwetir apparently died in the group's mass murder. A member of Kibwetir's family stated that the ostensible leader's actions had been entirely influenced by unclear about his story and about the movement. The BBC reported that Kibwetir had been treated for bipolar disorder a year or so before the group's suicide. At that time, the Ugandan authorities considered him a fugitive and mass murderer because they thought he escaped. In 2014, it was announced by the Ugandan National Police that there were reports that Kibwetir was hiding in Malawi. Mwerinde is assumed to have survived the church conflagration. Ugandan authorities believe that she left the Sex Kanungu compound in the early hours of March 17. In April 2000, police issued an international warrant for her arrest in connection to the sect killings. In September 2011, Mwerinde and several other prognosticators who incorrectly predicted various dates for the end of the world were jointly awarded an Ig Nobel Prize for teaching the world to be careful when making mathematical assumptions and calculations.
What cult should I speak about next? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.